Welcome back to Creative Thinkers. My name is Miguel Valenzuela, and we are here with a very special guest, artist, professor Tauna Cole-Dorn. And I'm excited to have her here. How are you?
I'm great. I am excited to be here to talk with you, Miguel. Thank you so much.
Very cool. So you're a very interesting individual. You've done a lot of things in your life, but we want to start by really understanding who you are as an individual. So can you explain to us if you're from Las Cruces, because you're not from El Paso, or were you born somewhere else, ended up in Las Cruces? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, so it was more the latter. I was born in north central Idaho, grew up on a wheat farm, and my mother was a painter, and my dad was very resourceful and creative in his own right, but he really tended to the farm and raising us, and I'm the oldest of 4 girls.
Wow, 4 girls. It must have been pretty exciting for your dad, huh?
Yes. Yeah, they used to always tell the story of every time mother was pregnant that the heartbeat was so strong, he must be having a boy.
But it never happened, right?
It never happened, so that's the way it goes. And none of us wanted to take over the farm. Although,
your poor father.
And yeah, so he dealt with it. I think he had a good time with the 4 of us.
That sounds pretty exciting. Well, as far as creativity is concerned, because obviously our show is called Creative Thinkers, how did that come about? Was it because of the resourcefulness of your dad? Was it more your mother? Were you influenced by other individuals?
I think I was really influenced by both of them. My dad was the sort of person that if he could figure out a way to make it, whatever, I mean, it didn't matter if it was a piece of equipment or if it was replacing the cab on a Caterpillar, or making, he made a sprayer. He actually built it from the ground up. He actually made a truck that would spray insecticides in the fields. And so I just was really impressed by his ability to problem solve and figure it out for himself. I'm sure he asked other people, how to do certain things, but he was very hands-on. And then watching my mother paint, she stopped painting when I was probably by the time I was 8 or 9, because we were all born very close to each other in age. We're very close to each other in age. Right. And so she had her hands full, and being in a small farm town community, there were other artists that she painted with, but there wasn't a lot of drive there to keep it going. And but I was such a daydreamer. I was really into, I was just really into daydreaming and thinking about space and life and experiencing life, and I really was not one of those people that was a planner. I was really kind of like, okay, this is what's going on in the moment. I'm going to go with it, and I just wanted to have fun. And
right.
like the song goes, and so by the time I got to college, it was time for me to really kind of think about what it was that I wanted to do with my life. And it took a while, but I think that once you start listening to yourself, you usually know what it is that you want to do or have a big idea. And art just kept coming up for me, even though I had no formal training. And so I just finally switched my major from business to art. And once I did that, I really felt like I had found my home.
And
And
what was your major in art? What did you study exactly? What was your focus?
well, it was actually like equal parts painting and sculpture.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I had a
That's
wonderful,
mine as well, believe it or not.
really,
Yeah. Paint,
yeah,
well, actually, it was sculpture when I was an undergrad with a minor in painting. And then in grad school, it was a major in painting and sort of a minor in graphic design, which I really love. I just love graphics.
yeah, I do too. I sometimes think that maybe that's what I should have pursued because I do love it as well. But in undergrad, my emphasis was more sculpture and painting. And then after I graduated, I took some time off and I had kept painting. I just thought, with sculpture, I don't know if I can find the space to store sculptures. I don't know if I would keep making work if I labeled myself as a sculptor. So I
Right.
decided to just stick with painting and pursued that. And then came down to New Mexico to as for grad school and really stayed with painting. I didn't even dabble in sculpture.
That's interesting because now I can see where the kind of inspiration came from, the more three-dimensionality from your father and the more 2D from your mother. Were
Mhm.
they big influences on what you did
Well,
as far as content, inspiration,
oh,
things of that nature?
no, not really. I mean, I think when I was working with sculpture, some of the materials that I was using were from the farm, but
Oh,
so the materials, yes. I think indirectly living in a wide open space
hmm,
has influenced my way of thinking about work and how one can use space metaphorically to
right.
um, to speak to identity and so that's where I've found the connection more than in anywhere else through their work that they did while I was a young one, but
Yeah, one of the things that I have found with individuals is how everybody is creative, as far as I'm concerned. I can see it all over the place. I mean, we can talk about people's attire, we can talk about the way that they present their food, they plate their food. So everybody has that within them. I wonder if your mother, I could absolutely see, but I wonder if your dad understood that what he was creating were these three-dimensional objects and if that helped you begin to have that love for creativity. Did it in any way?
well, what you're saying reminds me of a conversation that I had with him when I brought home this sculpture that I had done in the class that out of alabaster, and it was my first experience carving rock, basically.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
And he asked me, it was a figurative piece, and he asked me how I came up with my idea for it. And I said, I really just saw the image in the rock. And I just,
Hmm.
that was my inspiration for it. And he got that. And he could relate to his problem solving by being able to like visualize how he could see something come to fruition. And so I,
Right.
yeah, so and that's, that is part of that creative process is that maybe it doesn't come in the beginning, but when you're problem solving, maybe you've been thinking about something for a long time, or you look at a wall or you look at it, like Franz Klein, the painter, he's been quoted as saying something to the effect of just sitting in front of a canvas and staring at it for
Mm.
a while and then seeing the imagery come forth and then just
Right. Right.
and so there's different ways I think to enter into creating, whether it's the creator releasing something that they see or
Right.
or manifesting it And that blank canvas is just, it's just a support surface. It's just, and that's all it is, and that's, that's always really interesting to see the different angles that creators can approach their problem solving from.
Absolutely. And I think that when people start to kind of delve into those ideas and allow them to come out, that's when the real creativity comes about. Have you ever had that in your life where you have that kind of epiphany? Oh, this is exactly what needs to be done.
Oh, I definitely. I think that, when I was in grad school, after the midway point,
Hmm.
or maybe it was right around well, I would say the midway point, I had done a series of paintings that were based off of this chair that I had found at a flea market and setting it in a space. And so I had done probably like 13 or 14 drawings and paintings of it. And
Hmm.
then from that point forward, I decided I needed to change my direction a little bit. And, some of what happened there was that all of a sudden I, um, I decided to kind of let go of how I was approaching image making,
Right.
not completely, but I started to think of objects as, okay, objects are something that we can think of in more than just one way. It's not just about putting them in front of you to create a still life, that objects can have meaning, and that meaning can relate to a person in many different ways. And so I was really thinking about identity, and so I started looking at objects in this through this lens of how can I identify with this object in a way that speaks to my identity. And then I started thinking about the space of the canvas in that way too. So I
Right.
just, by taking on a completely different mindset and asking different questions, then that's what really, I think, created an epiphany for me that I don't, I can break these rules, that if I want to have an abstracted background and then paint objects realistically and just have them floating in different spaces, I can do that. There's, and it doesn't, when I say it out loud, it doesn't seem like it's that big of an epiphany, or it's not, but in my personal studio space it was an epiphany. And then I think in the most recent years, um, I've been painting water for quite some time, and all of a sudden, I'm driving down Main Street and I'm thinking, I should be painting on circle canvases or circle panels,
Oh, really?
these squares and these rectangles, but I wasn't sure why the circle was coming up. And I knew that I had been looking at some other artists that were working with different geometric shapes, like
Mhm.
Isabel Stowe does. And
Yes, exactly.
yeah, and so that might have been in my subconscious, but really when that thought came to me, it felt very, um, very fresh and very authentic. And I just started doing it. And so, and water is always moving, and then over time, I'm still working with the circle painting or the circle format, the tondo, and I'm realizing there's more than just the subject of water that is playing into this idea of circle. There's, through meditation, I could say that there's, the eye creativity, which is, again, that circle. There's, um, when we think about cosmology or the cosmos, we can think about mandalas and circles and
Yes.
geometry and all of that. So it's, you know, the longer I stay with it, the more connections I see, and in how it's making connections with what I'm doing, that's outside of my studio practice and that complements it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. One thing that you hit upon just a moment ago was the fact that you had that kind of just going down the street at one point and kind of just envisioning something different. That was one of the things that for me was a big deal, finding my aesthetic. Um, I really didn't understand the concept until I started grad school of what finding your aesthetic is. I was really confused. What is your aesthetic? What is your beauty? How do you find it?
Yeah. You know, I think that I'm a very reflective person, and a lot of people have told me that I'm very calm, and that I can be very calming to be around, and some people feel like they open up when they're around me, and I think that that is part of my nature, is just to be relaxed. And even though I might not always feel relaxed, you know, or but I um, and so when I look at the body of work that I've created over the last 30, 40 years, what resonates with me is this like internal searching,
Hmm.
and it can show up through the isolation of a figure. It can show up through empty spaces, just working with light, like I did with the chair. It can show up with a door series, or focusing on water, and um, and so it's. I think what's difficult sometimes is like what you're what you're feeling and witnessing. How do you get that to manifest itself aesthetically in your work? And
Right.
yeah, and I think that that's an ongoing process. I don't know that I've come to. I don't think that I'm there yet, but I think that I'm getting closer.
That's awesome. Well, that's the point is to always keep moving forward. At least that's my belief. If you stay stagnant, which I actually did get into a place where I wasn't very productive as far as artwork was concerned. Have you ever gotten into a situation like that where you're kind of stuck, which is terrible for artists anyways?
Yeah.
The,
Well,
the famous artist block,
right. Yeah, when I became a mother,
Hmm.
um, I, I painted for a little while because I had a couple of shows coming up right after he was born, or that had already been scheduled. And then there was a long period of time where honestly I wasn't sure I ever wanted to paint again. I wasn't in love with it anymore. I loved being a mother. I thought that all of my creativity was going into the pregnancy and the birthing and the nurturing, and 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 I felt it was really conflicting to feel that way about it, because I was just like, well, I'm an instructor at the university. I teach studio classes. This has been my identity for 15 years, 20 years, and can I let it go? I was just asking all sorts of questions to try to figure out if it was just a temporary thing, or if it was really like time for me to search for something else in my
Right.
life. And I'm glad that I didn't search for something else in my life.
It came back around then.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what helped bring it back around for me is that eventually I got into yoga, and I feel like that kind of woke me, and and my son was getting older, and and you know, and I think sometimes what you have to do is you have to, or this is my personal opinion, I think sometimes what you need to do is expose yourself to artists that will help inspire you, and or you know, or like right now, I've met a group of mother artists that are from Albuquerque and El Paso and Las Cruces and in other states, and so having these conversations to, you know, talk about the dynamics of balancing creativity or a studio practice with family, and the different roles you have within a family, and it's not uncommon for women and mothers to be kind of torn, and so and to kind of think of, oh, well, you know, does my art making have to look like this? Can it look like something else?
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned a little bit about getting away. I also stepped away from my artistic career in a sense because I had my late wife passed away 11 years ago. And when unfortunately that happened, I also said, you know what, I need to dedicate my time to my children, which is very interesting. So I see a lot of parallels between yourself and me and I. But I want to get back into my painting. How did you get back into it as far as connecting with these new people? Did they inspire you directly, or were these thoughts that came from you?
Well, these were thoughts that came from me, and I actually have only just met them in the last year. So I think that what they have done for me is help me understand what I was going through in previous years, and it's, you know, and maybe I could be supportive to them because everybody's kind of in a different time with their families and their practice, you know, and it's so I think with painting, like what I would encourage you is just to have a daily practice where you don't have any expectations. You're just, you know, messing around basically. And I feel like for me, it's getting back to this idea of appreciating what is in my environment, you know, my backyard, in my house, that, you know, like if you do a little still life a day or one a week, you know, that's you're kind of your mind starts to kind of direct its energy towards thinking about that more.
Yeah.
And it's when we're not doing it that the energy doesn't go there. And all we tend to do is beat ourselves up for not being there. And maybe we don't even beat ourselves up. Maybe we just forget, you know, because life has taken over. I mean, a lot of different scenarios can take place there, but I think for me, it's been finding artists, and Instagram is great for this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been finding artists that that have more of a daily practice. I did a couple of 100-day challenges 2 years in a row, and that was really helpful because I think one of the things that I get caught up with is time. You know, I'm always like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm always anxious about, do I have time to sit in the studio and do this?
It's a constant battle, isn't it?
It is. It is. And but then when we're, you know, all of a sudden we watched an hour of TV or we've been on Facebook for an hour, it's just like, okay.
Now I'll dedicate some time to my creativity. And talk about creativity, how important do you think being creative is in people's lives? Do you think that it's something that everybody should embrace?
Yes. Yes. I think if you don't embrace your creativity, then you are missing out.
I 100% agree.
You're missing out on opportunities. You're missing out on, these experiences that you could give yourself. And, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It's like, what you were saying at the beginning of the show. I mean, you cook a meal, that's being creative. You plant a garden, you rethink the furniture in the living room. You choose a car or a haircut or all of that. Yeah, it's being creative. And and I think creativity is just a conscious effort to have an intention that you follow through on. And if you don't follow through on it, then it's it might come back, it might just disappear, and then you're going to have another opportunity. And and I think what people have to think about is how they're defining creativity.
Right.
And they're probably already doing things creatively in their life, and they just have to recognize that it is creative, and it's not about the visual arts or writing or dancing. I mean, part of that is creative, but it's so expansive.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. This conversation has been fantastic. I want to thank you for being part of our show. If people want to get a hold of you, if they want to commission you for a work of art, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, Instagram is probably the easiest place to get a hold of me. I'm tcole_artist, or on Facebook. And I do have a website, and it is published, but I only published it because I want to have it out there, but it is not organized. But my contact information is there.
What is it, under your name?
Yes, it's under Tauna Cole-Dorn.
Very good. Well, once again, I want to thank you for taking the time out to talk to us. It was a fantastic and awesome conversation. Did you have fun?
I did, Miguel. Thank you. I can't believe 28 minutes already.
It always goes by so fast, doesn't it?
I know. I could just keep talking to you and about creativity.
Well, we'll talk a little bit further in a moment. I have to exit the show now. I wanted to thank our audience for joining us today, and thank you, Tauna, for being here. So once again, we are Creative Thinkers, and please join us next time. Thank you very much. My name is Miguel Valenzuela.